Well, nice to meet you. I really appreciate you, jumping on in such a last minute. We The whole idea of the summit was put together a couple months back when one of the people I was working with, her sister actually lost her foot due to
Mm,
diabetes, and she had pretty. I mean, she had a lot of other metabolic issues, but she kind of wasn't really babysitting it the way she needed to be, really being on top of it, and ended up in the hospital, lost her foot, and she actually passed last year from diabetes. So
mm,
uh, we just thought, we're already doing things with keto and a number of other, food-based, not really diet-based, more about how to do it, where you don't get bored and sick of it, and bringing chefs and what have you on.
hmm.
But anyway, that was kind of the long and short. And my grandfather passed to diabetes. My uncle passed to diabetes, and the last thing I'm going to do is follow their footsteps, so to speak, into the
Right,
grave.
right, right.
Um, and looking at your background and some of the other speakers we have, um, you kind of chase it from head to toe, I guess is the best way to say it, from how you're pursuing healing with people. How did you begin your journey, and as far as looking at diabetes specifically?
I
What are
don't
you
look at
doing?
I don't look at diabetes specifically at all, actually. The whole body is a unit. So diabetes is, we go after it the same way you go after a bunion. You go after it the same way you have a herniated disc, the same way you go after an eye condition or a heart condition, or it's all the same thing. The body is one unit. So according to the medical monopoly, this thing is genetic. So,
Yeah, I,
so
I, I kind of heard the same things from my dad's doctors, that
yeah,
I should be concerned, I should pay attention, and he ultimately had a kidney failure, failure because of the statins and all the other crap he was taking.
right, right. Yeah.
And so go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that they don't really have any. They only have three solutions, and it's drugs, injections, and surgeries. So if somebody doesn't want drugs, injections, and surgeries, they're probably not the people to go to.
Yeah, so you don't, you're not in favor of the medical field as a whole then, or
Just for emergency, urgent situations.
that's interesting.
There's really no reason why anyone should go see their primary care physician ever in their life. Never. Unless they're stuck in what I call medical prison. And that's, they absolutely need to be on insulin or blood pressure meds or whatever. And they're stuck. So they have to keep going back to their legal drug dealer.
That's such a approach. I mean, you're not alone in that. I mean, I've listened to Dana White and everybody else who's 100% on board of functional health versus the whole pills and what have you.
Yeah.
So
And so they do this thing called overdiagnosing. And once you're overdiagnosed, you're going to get hit with the three options: drugs, injections, or surgeries. There's no other option. It's literally a dead end full of drugs, injections, and surgeries.
all food. It's all about food.
No, it's not all about food. Food is only one third the problem.
So right now, when you're treating your clients, what are the things when if you, I mean, I talk to a lot of diabetics, type 1 and type 2, and the type 2, it's just to me, it's just largely lifestyle that they put themselves into the trap they're in.
Right.
Um, but they're all at a point now where the shame that they feel because it's largely because they're obese and they have other issues going on. What do you talk to them about as far as when you're looking at them? Is it just kind of a hardcore approach to it of, you need to get off this and do this? Or is it, how do you actually approach your clients and getting them past that, the feeling they're at and the frustration and the first steps of, any of these processes to get off of, to get off the pills and get healthy?
So I actually don't take clients anymore because
Oh,
I get attacked so often. So in order to preserve um, my work, we made a membership. So when people come into the membership, there is a blood sugar course that they can take.
Okay.
And in there, they can follow what I say or they can not. It's up to them.
Okay. So before that step, how were you approaching it with them? Because there's so many people that are frustrated, and their biggest thing is there's just so much information. And I've read your like case studies, and there are those that have stopped, like you said, but there's a lot that have actually continued and have had success. But
Mhm.
how did you get them to have that conviction in the early stages before you just were purely membership based?
I didn't. Because I'm a social media influencer, people already come knocking at the door knowing the deal. So I don't have to change anyone. You know,
Right.
it's they sit there and they binge my videos and they watch or they read my books. I mean, I have 9 books. So I don't have to, the breaking of the belief system happens out in the digital world. So by the time they actually get to me, they should be ready. And if they're not ready, then we say, hey, it doesn't sound like you're ready. And we throw the fish back in the pond.
That's I guess that's keeping it simple from a business standpoint. How
Yeah.
did you get to the point where when you're doing your first couple books where people started really did you do any coaching? Was it just hear the facts and
Yeah. I mean, of course, early in my career, I was a coach and I'd take clients over the phone and all that jazz. And um, so there's a lot of experience there for sure. So, yeah, not everyone's ready. Not everyone's ready. But I have no interest in trying to convince them to be ready. Everyone has free will. Everyone has to make the decision. They have to do it on their own.
gotcha. So well, I mean that's the problem though, is most people never get to that step. They're challenged.
Especially with type 2 diabetics,
Yeah.
because type 2 diabetics are typically lazy people. Now, I know that just triggered someone, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're all lazy people, but most of them are because they know it's lifestyle. Type 1 is you're born with it, so to speak. Type 1 is a birth defect. Type 2 is not a birth defect. In fact, I would even say they should be separate names. It shouldn't be called diabetes 1 and diabetes 2. It shouldn't. It should be completely different names. But the medical monopoly likes to confuse people. And so a type 2 diabetic is typically someone who really, really, really loves their food. And they love their carbohydrates. They are addicted to the cake and the cookies and the soda and the this and the that. And then you throw on top of that they're having sugar spikes. These people have mood swings like none other. And it's very difficult to look them in the eye and say, hey, look, you have a problem and you can fix it, but you have to be willing to do it. It's almost like approaching an alcoholic. It's very much similar.
Yeah, it's definitely an addiction factor.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, because blood sugar spikes give you mood swings. In fact, I would propose that a lot of our serial killers and people that have done awful things in society have blood sugar issues. Not to mention mineral deficiencies on top of it. They're missing all sorts of minerals and vitamins, and there's a lot of nutritional deficiency involved. And this is going to affect them at a major level. ADHD, bipolar, depression, all these things could be at the root of blood sugar issue.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't help when you add in the lack of quality nutrients and what have you in the food and yeah, in the food systems. That definitely can it makes the race tough from there.
Yeah,
It,
it's I can't give a better example than it's like dealing with an alcoholic.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought about it that way, but that there are definite correlations because, you look at the issues they have and the issues that diabetics have, and, they're largely, they can't sleep, they're constantly going after chasing the dragon, so to speak.
Yeah, tell them to get off all carbohydrates for 1 month. See what happens. They will rebel. They will go nuts.
The what's the, I mean, I know you heal from, head to toe and there's a lot of different factors. I mean, what is the, if you're talking to the audience, I mean, outside of, calling people lazy, I definitely agree 100% because most of them don't exercise. They complain when they walk across the room, their feet hurt.
Yeah.
They have every ailment that a 90-year-old has when they're in their 50s and 60s,
Yep.
and now you got juvenile diabetes that's, going to surpass any of it just because of what mom and dad are feeding.
Yep.
How do you convey to them? I mean, you're social, you're an influencer. You've written books, you're an author. I mean, your points are, read and they're listened to. How do you get them to listen? How do you get their ear and just say, what you're doing is just, you're screwing your kids up without really,
Yeah.
how would you pass that along?
I would pass it along as you have to take care of yourself. You can't rely on the medical system. The medical doctor is not trained to heal you, but your body is divinely designed to heal. So you just have to put it into the environment so that it does it itself. I think explaining the medical system is the best way to wake people up because they have a limited belief that they're a car and their doctor is a mechanic. And it's not the case.
Yeah.
And once they unplug from that limited belief, that's when the aha moment happens. And they will probably get scared at first. Like, oh my gosh, you mean I have to save myself? Yes, you have to save yourself. Another message that I like to convey is that, your health is your priority. And so that should be number one, because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. And you're going to end up being a burden on others. So I always tell people, your health is your number one priority in this life. If you're over the age of 13, that's your priority, is your health. Second is, your money. Probably past 20, but it's your money. It's your money, because if you don't have money, then you can't operate through this jungle called capitalism. Until they get rid of capitalism, money is is a big priority.
Definitely paramount, especially with health. I mean, if you're not going to see doctors, you're paying for functional medicine and all these things that aren't, covered with insurance and, whatever status out there. So
right. I mean, we used to have to turn so many people away because they couldn't afford my program. They couldn't afford the services. And then when I converted to a membership, which is extremely affordable, we still have people that are like, I can't do it. And it's like, there's just people out there who, they didn't take their priorities serious. And perhaps they didn't know it was priority. Maybe they didn't. But I say, look, Number one is your health. Number two is your finances. Number three is your inner peace. But you're not going to find the inner peace without the health and the finances. So
Yeah, it's definitely a circle of frustration for a lot of people. The
just
so I mean,
imagine if every 13-year-old in the world understood that those are their three priorities in order.
you wouldn't need health insurance.
Right.
I mean, which is a huge expense to a lot of people. But yeah,
Instead, they're taught that their priority is to get a job, go to school, get good grades, fit in, and get a job or go to jail. Pick one.
yeah, pick one. That's a short list too.
Yeah,
It's
because in high school, the bells go off. You got 1 minute to get to your next class. It's preparing you for the corporate world, or it's preparing you for prison. One or the other.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm sure that'll wake some people up when they have their kids going to school in the morning. Yeah, but yeah, they get challenged with you got the vending machines. There's stuff in their kids full of goldfish at soccer games and
Yep.
baseball and sports. They're out there exercising. They have a Gatorade in their hand and they have or some kind of energy drink and they have goldfish in the other hand.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I mean that's yeah, I don't think the parents wake up to, it's their reality, not the kids' reality. They just have to, help the kids make that change.
Right. Exactly. It's tough. And you're up against the advertising, the commercials, the billboards, and you're up against the traditions. If nobody in the family breaks the tradition, then, the apple pie gets passed down and grandma's special cake recipe gets passed down and the cookies and the donuts and the soda. You would think soda would be illegal at this point.
Oh yeah, with the ingredients, it's insane.
It's like
Yeah, you look back,
cigarettes.
yeah, like you look back at the ingredients from a while back, which everybody that I don't think people even paid attention to that. That what I was eating as a kid is very different than the same brand that they're eating right now. So yeah, it's even more challenging with the toxicity of stuff. But
Yeah.
so how do they get so when people trust their doctors, for whatever reason, you found out early that that's the worst thing that you could possibly do. And a couple of the doctors that I've interviewed, they admit that they're not taught anything about nutrition and food in medical school. It's like, it's in the, few hours versus the many hours that they train for. How do they get them to that point? I mean, what has to happen to where the doctors are actually being a doctor instead of just, changing the oil instead of fixing the car?
Hmm. Like, how do we change it? Or how do they get to that level?
Right. But to start with, how did they get to that level, and what are they going to have to do to pull that carpet out from underneath them?
Well, there's a long history of medical practices, and I'll just keep it in America. When America was born, we were in a medical civil war. There was different types of health out there. You had the homeopathic people, you had the hygienic people, you had all sorts of different, and they would open up schools. And so you literally had a ton of schools. It's kind of like how it is these days with health coaching. There's all these health coaching schools out there. That's how it was with med school.
Yeah.
And once the natural health movement started to get big, boom, the Civil War happened. And once the Civil War happened, everyone pretty much went broke. The economy went kaput. And so a lot of these schools went out of business. And then the early 1900s, pharmaceuticals were on the rise. And it was obvious that it was going to be a very profitable mega business. It wasn't a mega business yet. And then Carnegie and Rockefeller got involved. They
Yeah.
did, they sent out the Flexner report happened, and the Flexner report was like an investigation into what's wrong with med school. And they took the findings of that and they made med school generic. So every med school in America is now generic. And then the pharmaceutical companies came in and the big device companies came in, and they're essentially the sponsors of the school.
Yeah.
So all the natural practices became quackery. And
So
med school became a breeding system, a feeder system to this medical monopoly. So it was a long buildup all the way to the early 1900s. By the mid 1900s, 1950 or so, it was pretty solidified.
yeah, so when so many people read the conspiracy theory, so to speak, of all this with Rockefeller and everything, but it is the foundation you talked about, and it's absolutely true that it's become just a breeding ground of mediocrity. It's not. There's no superiority. There's no superior discussions on how to improve the health. It's just how to keep you alive, so to speak. I mean, it's like everybody. So anyway, I agree 100% with what you're saying there. And I don't think a lot of the audience believes that because they've been trained to believe in what their doctor. I get people debating me on it all the time that are in our groups. So I'm glad you shared that. At least it gives them some kind of choice. And then, so what do you think the next step would be to get this? Is Kennedy going to change the ball? Is going to move the ball?
I think the solution is that just people take responsibility for themselves. I'm not sure that anyone can bring down the system. I don't think I can do it. I don't think you can do it. I don't think that one or two or three or four people can do it. It's just about people voting with their decisions, voting with their money. It's the same thing with the food corporations. If you think that sugary cereals is really, really bad for society, then stop purchasing sugary cereals.
Yeah.
And how do you get another 5 million people to stop purchasing sugary cereals?
Got to cure the addiction.
Right. So,
Yeah.
it's the same thing with the medical monopoly. It is a monopoly. So I don't know that it can ever be taken down. It's just a revolt from the people. It's just people reversing their limited beliefs. That's all it is, one at a time. Because I would like to think that, my way, head to toe healing, because I invented a new healthcare system and it's working. We have the most healing results anyone's ever seen on camera. So I would like to say, yeah, I'm going to start my own school and I'm going to teach new practitioners and we're going to just take the whole thing down, but it's just not a reality. It's not.
It's just
It's too big. It's a $1.6 trillion industry, this medical system. You add in the healthcare, you add in the health insurance, you add in the pharmaceuticals, the devices, you add in the AMA and the FDA. I mean, it's massive. And now you got, you got Kennedy out there. Let's make America healthy again. I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but it's not going to work. That's insane.
it comes down to the almighty dollar, and people not wanting to change. So it's unfortunate, but that is a big case. I mean, my hope is if I can get a few people, few of these people to get off their duff and actually start moving and eating the things they should be eating, and get their mindset right, that they can pass that on to their kids. I mean,
yeah, my approach is to help my people.
Yeah.
And so you become my people by joining my membership, and those are the people that we help. and hopefully that will be 10,000 or more people at some point. And it's just a blip in the radar, compared to the 8 billion people on Earth. But I just do my part to the best of my ability.
Yeah. How did you begin your journey in as far as looking at diabetes specifically?
I
What are
don't
you
look at
doing?
I don't look at diabetes specifically at all, actually. The whole body is a unit. So diabetes is, we go after it the same way you go after a bunion. You go after it the same way you have a herniated disc, the same way you go after an eye condition or a heart condition, or it's all the same thing. The body is one unit. But my story is, there's not too much to tell. I was messed up in my late 20s. I got caught up in the what I call medical monopoly. I realized that it was pretty much a scam, and I figured out how to heal myself and became passionate and switched careers, and next thing you know I have a PhD. And it happened real fast.
No kidding. So what were you what was going on when you made that transition? Is that too far back for you, or
It was a long time ago. I was 28. So that's 17 years ago. I had heart issues, or at least I thought I did. And yeah, they ran me through every test you can think of, including having heart monitors on, walking around with these things attached to my chest.
at 28? Wow,
Yep.
that's crazy.
Yep. Because my dad had a heart attack and had open heart surgery at 47. And
Okay.
his dad died on the table at 50. So according to the medical monopoly, this thing is genetic. So,
Yeah, I kind of heard the same things from my dad's doctors. That
yeah,
I should be concerned, I should pay attention. And he ultimately had kidney failure, renal failure because of the statins and all the other crap he was taking.
right. Yeah.
And so what's your, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that they don't really have any, they only have three solutions, and it's drugs, injections, and surgeries. So if somebody doesn't want drugs, injections, and surgeries, they're probably not the people to go to.
Yeah. So you don't, you're not in favor of the medical field as a whole then, or
Just for emergency, urgent situations.
that's interesting.
There's really no reason why anyone should go see their primary care physician ever in their life. Never. Unless they're stuck in what I call medical prison. And that's, they absolutely need to be on insulin or blood pressure meds or whatever. And they're stuck. So they have to keep going back to their legal drug dealer.
That's such an approach. I mean, you're not alone in that. I mean, I've listened to Dana White and everybody else who's 100% on board of functional health versus the whole pills and what have you.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things that you looked at? I mean, the challenges you faced when you were going through and looking at, okay, I mean, it's obviously a big trial and error for you trying to identify how do I get off the heart monitors? How do I get to that next step? I mean, what was your initial steps back then?
The first step was to realize I was being scammed. That was the first one.
So what slapped you in the face to make that happen?
The fancy machines. And every time I would do a fancy scan, I would ask the nurse or the technician, I would say, how much does this machine cost? And they'd be like, oh, it's 3 million. And I'm like, oh, how many people do you run through this a year?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I just started doing the math, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. You just got to apply some street sense, and you'll figure out that you're being marched to slaughter because these people are experts in diagnosing. But in order for the diagnosis to make sense, they have to brainwash you into thinking it makes sense. And so they do this thing called overdiagnosing. And once you're overdiagnosed, you're going to get hit with the three options: drugs, injections, or surgeries. There's no other option. It's literally a dead end full of drugs, injections, and surgeries. And so once I realized all of that, I pulled myself out, started doing
So,
research, and changed my diet.
so all food. It's all about food.
No, it's not all about food. Food is only 1/3 of the problem.
Okay. So would you say you look at food because a lot of people are talking about, gut health and things like that, which is the primary component. Exercise. I mean, just the few basics is, what the kind of routine that you would be following versus checking in with your doctor on occasion.
Back then? You talking about back then?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like, I mean, you look healthy, and I don't know, what your age is now, but if you're not doing anything, I'm 60 and I haven't been on a pill, and my life outside of back when my parents took me to the doctor when I was a kid and said you need this antibiotic or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm 45. I don't see any doctors. I already learned my lesson.
That's interesting. So when you're looking at the diabetic side of things, I mean, the people who are type 2,
Mm-hmm.
and they just I'm trying to figure out how to get the audience to actually listen. I've had them tell me that keto is bad, this diet's bad, and my point to them is anything that you're talking about is a hell of a lot better than where you are right now and what you're doing. So what are your thoughts on that? I've had people on the keto side that think that this will actually eradicate diabetes, and I know that diabetics run into issues when they're doing a keto type of thing, and paleo as well. What are your thoughts on some of these the diets? They're not really fads anymore. At one time they were, now they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, keto and carnivore are very good ideas for diabetics for short term. The thing is, type 2 diabetes is a nutritional deficiency. People are missing minerals, and the chemical reaction that the minerals have, which is chromium and vanadium, that's how you process sugar. So if you're missing chromium and vanadium, the diet will help you, but as soon as you get off the diet, that you're going to have a blood sugar issue again. So
So
you have to fix the deficiency and bring the sugar level down, which is all keto and carnivore is bringing the sugar way down, if not to zero.
yeah.
So it's a tag team effort. Nutrition up, sugar down. And then once you fix it, you can bring sugar back in slowly but surely.
So I never hear anybody addressing the mineral side of things. And you hear, you need supplementation, but nobody really talks about the mineral side of things. I think it's a largely overlooked side of, a lot of metabolic syndromes and issues.
Yeah, it's chromium and vanadium. That's why animals don't have diabetes, because they fixed it 100 years ago.
Oh, that's that's a joke. Definitely make a point. You
Yeah,
simplify
man.
diabetes to do two minerals.
Yeah, yeah. I joke around. That's why they call it type 2.
Yeah. So have you heard about this 1.5 that some doctors are talking about, where you have a lot of symptoms of type 1, but you're not testing as type 1, but you're definitely type 2. I mean, this is something that just threw me for a loop. I'm like, okay, seriously, they're going to throw a 1.5 in there now? We already have something that should, like you said, should not even be called diabetes. It should be called something else. Type 2 should be. Have
Yeah,
you heard of it?
it should be called blood sugar disorder or something, right? Like,
Yeah, something logical.
yeah. So, yeah, and I've heard of type 3, which they
I,
typically is a brain condition, right?
Yeah, and I've started hearing more and more about that. So, what are your thoughts on that whole aspect of it?
Well, when we zoom in on it, at the end of the day, it's just a human being who isn't processing sugar properly. And so that sugar is floating through their blood and it's doing damage to everything it touches. So type 1.5, type 2, type 3, it doesn't matter. It's just sugar floating through your blood, excess sugar floating through your blood and burning essentially everything that it touches. So the common sense would be to stop eating sugar. Step one, right?
Yeah.